welcome back to Mr. Watt Presents. Today we're going to talk about one of our favorite San Francisco neighborhood with Peter Linenthal, San Francisco historian. You wrote a couple books about it. We see you often in the streets promoting the cause and promoting awareness about where this hill comes from and what precedes us. Let's get started with the books and what got you interested in the subject and just the roots of it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wah. The Archive Project started in 1986, originally as an oral history project, collecting oral histories of the Russians in that neighborhood. But it grew, and when I joined it, I became fascinated with the old photos that were turning up. Our purpose is to collect anything to do with Potrero Hill history and then make it available. So these two books are one way that we've made that history available. I co-authored the books with Abby Johnston. She's my partner in the Archive Project. They're both Arcadia publications. The first book, San Francisco's Potrero Hill, was an overall look at Potrero history from Native American days until today. That book was popular. I have to say, I think we did a really good job on this book. We spent years putting it together. The Arcadia books are all a great deal. They're all about $20, and you really get a lot of history in them. But we feel like we were as comprehensive as we could be in this book.
And that was published
in the 80s. That book was successful, and they asked us to do this, Potrero Hill Then and Now. This was the first then and now book that Arcadia did in San Francisco, and it contrasts an old picture of somewhere in the neighborhood with what that same spot looks like today. I've heard that a lot of parents have used this book with their kids, taking them in walks around the neighborhood and finding something.
And this is mostly a pictorial book, this one.
Yeah.
Would you show us another example inside?
Oh, this is a cool panoramic view from 19th and Pennsylvania looking east. The first shot in the late 20s and the bottom shot today. You can see what a bustling industrial site Dogpatch was in those days. And how it's changed today.
You were up on 20th Street this past street fair, and you were involved in the archives at a booth promoting the cause of the Potrero Hill Archives Project. Who did you meet? Is the nature of the demographics and the Potrero Hill spirit different this day, this year, these past few years, or you still recognize the source, the fiber of what you love about that hill?
The hill has changed. I mean, there's no denying, like the rest of San Francisco, prices have forced a lot of people out, and a new group connected with tech is moving in. But the festival, which benefits the Potrero Hill Neighborhood House, which has a lot of community programs for seniors, disabled, lots goes on there. The festival is really one of our best ways to reach out and meet people. So I met hundreds of people. I know you saw the old stove that we had there at our table.
That's right.
It's a 1920s stove from a cottage on the hill. And it was a couple cool things happened at the festival. I met a man who knows the woman who used to live in that cottage, so I can get in touch with her and find out more about the history of the cottage. The cottage is gone. About a couple of years ago, it was torn down, and now a elegant new modern home is in its place. But the family that lives there now also came by, and they were fascinated to see the stove that that used to occupy their space.
So that was a piece of history in the form of an object. We have a few objects here gathered in front of us, and we will come back to them. But before we get further down the rabbit hole of your knowledge about Potrero Hill, I want to draw the attention to this event, which is coming up. If people want to tune in to the Archives Project and the Potrero Hill history.
This will be our 20th Potrero Hill History Night, and I think it's going to be a really good one. Rosemary Ostler, whose picture is on the poster with her brother, was born and raised on the hill, and she's putting together a presentation of family photos and photos of businesses, and she'll tell us the story of growing up on the hill in the 40s and 50s. And then a guy who I went to high school with at Lick Wilmerding for 2 years, Matt Callahan, is going to sing and talk about politics and music on Potrero Hill in the 60s and 70s. He was part of a world music band, the Looters, who performed at a venue on Potrero Avenue, which is now the skateboarding park near the freeway and General Hospital. In the 60s and 70s. It was kind of a punk music.
So right off of Potrero Avenue.
Yes.
Is that the one?
Yep. There's still a little bit of the farm left over there, but it's pretty much gone.
Great. So once again, this is on Saturday, November the 2nd at the Harrow High School at 18th Street.
Oh, San Francisco International High School is the name, at 655 De Harrow at 18th Street. And another part of the evening will be a pizza slice dinner from 5:30 to 7 on the patio at the school entrance. That's a nice time for old timers to schmooze with newcomers and visitors. And then the program in the school auditorium from 7 to 9 is free.
How frequently do you have these gatherings? Is it twice a year, 3 times a year?
History night just once a year. It's enough work for us to do. But we another event that we participate in the spring, it's called History Days at the Old Mint, and it's a weekend when history groups from all over the city and related organizations get together and occupy the Mint, the old Mint south of Market.
Your Facebook page is where people can mostly get the latest news about the group at the moment.
Yep.
Potrero Hill Archives Project on Facebook. There is a website as well, but it is more archival in nature as far as the latest updates and the events.
Another
page.
good source I might mention, on YouTube, some of our programs from previous history nights are available. So if you search Potrero Hill History Night, you'll find presentations. There was a great presentation a few years ago on Irish Hill, and then last year the historian Jonathan Lammers gave a great presentation on the police station on 3rd Street.
Well, very good. I think we've covered the pitches as far as inviting you to the wealth of information you can gather about Potrero Hill at Peter's events. But Peter has also brought a whole lot of toys with him. So it's time to dive into the actual nature of Peter's knowledge. Tell us about the Potrero Hill neighborhood, where it's coming from, and where it's going from here.
To give an overview, the geography is key to understanding the area. I love this image from the 1870s because it shows that originally Potrero Hill was a peninsula projecting into the bay, with Mission Bay to the north and Islay Creek to the south. Mission Bay has been completely filled in, and Islay Creek has been partly filled in, so its history as a peninsula is less obvious. Potrero means pasture, and when you understand Potrero Hill as a peninsula, you can see that it didn't take much for Mission Dolores to build fences and walls which completed the natural boundaries, and the Potrero was the pasture. Potrero means pasture for the cattle that belonged to Mission Dolores. But as a result, the filling in of Mission Bay went on for years and years. I think the final blows to the filling in of the bay happened after the 1906 earthquake, when there was tons of rubble. But before that time, it was basically the dump for the whole city. And it was really gross and polluted. And people said that if you fell in Mission Bay, you would die. There was a squatters' homeless village there that they called Dumpville. But what's interesting now, there's so much building going on in Mission Bay and around Potrero Hill, and a lot of the land that's being built on is fill. So that means when they dig, amazing old garbage comes out of the ground.
Right. And just so people visualize, where we're talking about now is where the whole UCSF development is. Right off of 3rd Street, right where the Warriors Stadium just got built. So if we're looking at this map, the Warriors Stadium would be more or less in between the two pools of water, correct?
Right. That's right.
Going from here, you have other maps.
This is a view looking north over the Union Iron Works, which was one of the major industries on Potrero Point. Potrero Point is the name for that peninsula that we think of as Potrero Hill today, and includes Dogpatch. As an aside, Dogpatch is, from what we understand, is a fairly recent term. It may date back to the 50s at the oldest. In any case, the Union Iron Works was one of the major industries on the West Coast, and when they were awarded the first government contract for a military boat, that showed that the West Coast was on a par with industries in the East. So it was a really big deal for the economy of California and the West in general. There's
and
another...
all that maritime activity got shifted to Oakland. Is that where it landed?
Yeah, that's more recently. Yeah, we didn't. The port in general didn't convert to container shipping. So that died out.
That's when that broke. That legacy kind of petered out, like in the 50s, 60s.
The 60s, I think.
That's when Potrero lost its sort of port.
Well, the whole port, all from not only Potrero Hill, but the docks to the north. Used to be that shipping used to be a big industry, but we didn't convert to container shipping, and so we lost that business, and that was a big change.
And if one takes a walk off of 3rd Street, Illinois, somewhere between 18th and 24th, it's obvious that a lot of turnover is happening at the moment around the Potrero Hill power plant.
Right, on 23rd.
What is going on in that neighborhood?
Nobody should miss seeing the historic buildings which have been restored on 20th Street. Those are really worth seeing. The rest, that's part of the Pier 70 development, which is where the Union Iron Works was. But as you said, moving to the south to the power station, they've done toxic cleanup, but no construction has taken place there. But I'm glad, and I think partly as a result of our making the historic brick buildings at the power station better known, the plans for the development of the power station at the moment are including adaptive reuse of Station A, which is the largest and most impressive of those brick buildings. That's the interior. It shows what an impressive space Station A is on the interior. And that earlier picture you showed of the sunlight on the brick buildings, there we go. Yeah, that's the northern end of Station A.
And currently, some of these new tech businesses are moving in and are being aware and respectful of the quality and history of these buildings. It seems to be the case. Is that right?
Well, I hope so. It kind of remains to be seen. I mean, Jules moved into one of the particularly historic buildings on 20th, and I thought that was a shame. I mean, it seemed like we could find a better tenant for such an important historic building. I
But
think
the building itself is
the building is
protected.
there, yes.
So
yes.
no one's going to tear it down.
No,
Whoever
no.
moves in.
That's right.
And that's the case with most of that neighborhood at the moment.
On 20th Street, the future of Station A looks pretty good. I'm not sure about the other brick buildings. There's several in the power plant. So I still want to keep on developments and do all we can to make sure as much of that is preserved as possible.
Are you consulted in these developments, or how do you stay tuned in, and what does the archives have in terms of a say in what's going on?
We started a petition online to save the historic brick buildings at the power station. And then we attend planning commission meetings when development issues are discussed and weigh in.
So there is a consulting happening.
There are
between
ways,
these
yeah. And
multiple
then,
groups.
I should say, we've been consulted by the groups that are developing Pier 70 on the historic interpretation that they'll do there. Another issue for us at Pier 70 was Irish Hill, and I think we did have an effect on how Irish Hill will be seen. Irish Hill is not that impressive now. It's maybe a 2-story chunk of serpentine on at about 21st. But it used to be a huge mini neighborhood of several blocks that you reached by 100-step stairway, and it was where workers in these industries might start out. It was the cheapest neighborhood to live in. And development plans at Pier 70 originally called for surrounding that remaining fragment with apartment buildings, but we called their attention to the historic importance of Irish Hill, and I have to mention Stephen Harai's did an incredible history of Irish Hill at our History Night, which is on YouTube. And we prevailed on Pier 70 developers to make a diagonal entryway to Irish Hill at 21st and Illinois.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. Is this shoe an Irish shoe?
I don't know. I don't know if it's Irish, but it did come out of one of these lots that had been water and then became a dump. And you can find all kinds of stuff like...
So that was part of the landfill findings.
Yep.
Great. Well, time flies when we're having fun and learning a thing or two among neighbors. Thank you for coming, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Watt.
Delighted to have you here. I want to draw the attention again to the next event of Potrero Hill Archives Project. History Night, Saturday, November the 2nd. Come on out for dinner and inexpensive slices of local pizza and stay for the program from 7 to 9 at the San Francisco International High School. Thank you, Peter, and we'll see you there.